Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and we've got a good and enthusiastic debate going on here today. I have to compliment my colleague who just spoke. He talked about encouraging the Liberals to keep their foot on the gas, Madam Speaker, and with respect to this, but often watching the Liberals and the way they're doing things, it's like watching teenagers go joyriding. We see their hair blowing in the wind, but there doesn't seem to be any purpose in what they're doing. And sometimes we wonder, is anybody steering over there? They're racing all over the place, but we don't think anybody's steering. And it's certainly not about getting attention. Providing leadership in Canada is important. It is about giving direction, and we'd really encourage the members opposite to begin to do that for Canadians. But thankfully, they have us to depend on. We delivered a trade deal for them. We gave them a trade deal that was pretty much negotiated and signed, and it was all ready to be wrapped up and presented. And they did everything they could to mess it up by tinkering with it, but thankfully they weren't able to wreck it, and now we're here today where they're actually supporting it. So we're excited about that, to see them actually supporting one good thing this year, and certainly CETA has been that. It's a trade deal, Madam Speaker, that gives increased access to the world's largest economic unit. So it gives us opportunity to begin to really mature our trade relationship with the European Union. And certainly any country that gets access to a market of 500 million people, almost 30 countries, we need to take that opportunity if we get it. This is the world's largest import market, and I didn't know this until today, but their imports are actually of a higher value than the entire GDP of our country. So it's a huge market that we're being able to access, and we look forward to being able to do that. They have economic activity every year of $20 trillion, so I'm certainly thinking that Canada can find a place somewhere in there to be able to really benefit from this agreement. Our side of the House here obviously has a history of pursuing trade agreements, and especially the Conservatives have been champions of that over the years, less so on the other side of the House, and maybe we'll just go into that a little bit. The NAFTA in the 1980s has turned out to be probably the most successful trade agreement ever made, and certainly we do about $2 billion of trade a day now with the United States. It's an incredibly effective and efficient trading relationship. There's tens of thousands of jobs that are tied to the trade that goes back and forth, and probably has the strongest economic ties in the world, even given the European Union and its structure. It's probably the most positive trade relationship in the world, and we look forward to continuing that. We hope that's something that this government can't mess up. I guess we were surprised before the President-elect in the United States was even suggesting that he wanted to talk to Canada about NAFTA, that this government would get down on one knee and ask him if he would possibly renegotiate that with them. It seemed like a very strange position to take, and yet our government moved ahead with that. We think it was naive. It was far too premature to be able to make those suggestions, but this government has done that already. We hope that will not impact NAFTA in any negative way. Our government was also responsible for 46 trade agreements. I was here early in the 2000s when Doha was the big thing, and that was kind of the one, if you want to call it, one trade initiative that everyone seemed focused on. And I remember going to Geneva in 2003, representing our party, and seeing the negotiations that were going on there, and that gradually faded out. They were not able to get an agreement. But one of the things that really concerned me and others in our caucus at the time was to understand that the Liberal government had no trade capacity in terms of putting these deals together, and so they were not that interested in looking anywhere else for trade agreements, and they didn't get them done. They did not pursue them. I think they had two maybe over the entire time that they were in power. So trade was not an important thing to the Liberal government. We came in, it took a couple of years actually to build that trade capacity. It took a while to get it up and running so that we could actually do the negotiating. But I think in the 7 or 8 years after that, it's remarkable that we were able to get almost 4 dozen trade agreements done around the world. I don't know if there's been any record of success like that around the world. And so now we're sitting here with CETA, and thankfully the government is supporting that. Hopefully they won't do anything further that would hinder that, and move ahead as quickly as possible with that. We also want to encourage them on TPP. TPP has been a good initiative. It's something that we would hope the government would be supporting enthusiastically. I know the Trade Minister had said almost a year ago it's not her job to promote those kinds of things, and specifically the TPP, but we certainly hope that attitude has changed. We see an initiative on the weekend from 6 countries to try to put together an agreement take the TPP and put it together and move ahead with it, even if the United States is not going to go. We don't know if they've made a decision on that or not yet. We've heard some rhetoric, but that trade agreement between countries would be phenomenal. Whether the United States was in it or not, we need access to that part of the world, and this TPP, the arrangements that have been made so far, the negotiations that have been done, would be only good for Canada, and so we would certainly look forward to seeing that move ahead as well. So we ask, I guess, the government that they keep their foot on the gas, and on this one they actually steer in the right direction and try to get that done as well. Trade is critical to my area. I've talked about this previously, but I think I probably need to highlight again for my constituents that we have a number of things going on in our riding that are very important and critical not only to our riding but to supporting the economy of this country. Agriculture is a big thing there. And so we have dryland grains and oil seeds. We have pulses, lentils. Pulses and lentils grown in my riding go around the world, and the majority of those pulses and lentils grown in Western Canada now are exported. We need an export market in order to continue to develop those agricultural industries. And in these trade agreements, agriculture is always the biggest trade impediment, or the biggest trade barriers are set up around agriculture, and so we want to encourage the government to take that seriously and to try to remove those barriers so that our folks can trade around the world. We have beef and pork as well coming out of our area. Beef is always one that has a lot of trade barriers that are being put up around it, and we encourage the government to take a strong stand. The Minister of Agriculture, former Minister of Agriculture, who's my seatmate now, was one who was instrumental in pushing back the legislation in the United States. Worked on that for almost 10 years, and we were able to win those battles at WTO until finally we were able to begin moving our beef more easily into the United States. We hope that's an issue that's not going to rear its ugly head or any other part in the near future, Madam Speaker. Energy is obviously important to all of us too, particularly those of us who have oil and gas in our ridings. We like to see pipelines move that product, but we know that product needs to go to export markets, needs to go to the United States. We need some markets into Asia and then also into Europe, and certainly we would encourage the government to continue to develop those types of export markets. In our province, potash is important. We mine potash, and it goes around the world, grows food to feed the people around the globe, and again, that's an export-dependent product. We have a lot of manufacturing, particularly agricultural manufacturing, that we need to move around the world. There's lots of markets in the European Union that we would like to be able to develop and continue to access and grow there. So we look forward to CETA assisting with that as well. CETA has had an interesting history. It started really back in about 2007 with the negotiations, or the discussions rather, were started in 2007, and it's necessary to sit down. And it's interesting, isn't it? That's only a year after we came in. Already our cabinet saw the possibilities and the real benefits that would come out of an agreement like that, and so they started having those discussions. It took a couple of years to get the negotiations going. They started in 2009, and by 2014, so in 5 years, they were able to negotiate the agreement and basically signed it in principle in 2014. And then there was given 2 years to settle the legal issues, to get the translation done, and we're at that point now. And it's interesting to see the government opposite trying to take credit for that. When you look at the timeline, Madam Speaker, you understand who actually did the work and who got the work done on that issue. As I mentioned earlier, the Liberals insisted on starting to tinker with it, and they almost lost it, but thankfully we've got to the point where we see the beginning of ratification in Europe now. And we hope that the implementation will soon come from this. We need to see it come into effect fairly quickly. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, what the consequences of having this agreement are in terms of our economy. We're almost just about done, Madam Speaker. I could go on for hours. This agreement will bring a potential 20% boost in bilateral trade and a $12 billion annual increase to the Canadian economy. So, we encourage government to remember that in their discussions and negotiations. We need to see this finished up as quickly as possible. The economic equivalent of this agreement is like adding the economic equivalent of $1,000 to the average Canadian family's income, up to 80,000 new jobs in the Canadian economy. So everyone in this House needs to get behind this agreement, see it as something that's really good for the future of our country, and we'll move ahead with CETA.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, one of the common things from the Conservatives as they stand up and speak is they like to assume that they have some credit that's owed to them when it comes to the issue of trade. You know, the Liberal Party traditionally has been a very strong advocate for change, for trade. And it's been a long time since we've seen a Prime Minister as aggressive on this particular file. Now, when we take a look at CETA, and to the Conservative Party's credit, yes, they did do some of the preparatory work, but let's not kid anyone. If it was not for the current Prime Minister, in particular the minister responsible for this file, we would not be debating this bill today, Mr. Speaker. And that is the truth of the matter. On the overall issue of trade, we all recognize, only New Democrats don't recognize the value of trade, Madam Speaker, but I can tell you we all recognize the importance of it. And our record will demonstrate where we have had trade surpluses, years and years of trade surpluses, whereas the Conservatives and the Harper government had nothing but years and years of trade deficits. The Korea deal, which they crow about, is something in which they were the laggers of all the countries. They were one of the last countries to sign on, was Canada, as the Conservatives resisted it. My question to the member is, would you agree, at least there's a consensus amongst the Conservatives and Liberals that that trade is important to our country. It's what generates our economy and good.
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'm excited to see him joining our bandwagon here. This is really good because we obviously they have a newfound enthusiasm for trade deals, and that's great because they can join with us at any time. There are two agreements, and that long focus on Doha are kind of their history, and that's okay because at least they were taking a look at it at the time, and they were trying a little bit here and there. But the fact is that we signed 46 agreements in less than 10 years. We were the ones in 07 and then 09 and 14 that put CETA together, brought it all the way to the point of where it was signed, and it was just a matter of finishing it off and signing the ratification part of it. And then the TPP, the establishment of the TPP, and the distance that we came on that relationship, I think, is a tribute to the commitment of the Conservatives on their focus on trade. So we welcome the Liberals, and particularly the Parliamentary Secretary across the way, to join with us and to celebrate trade and the history of trade in this country.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Courtenay Albany.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the member for his speech and breaking down the history, certainly of his party working on this deal. Before I move forward with my question, I want to ask him to join me in shouting out to the lighthouse keeper that saved a life off Denman Island this weekend. The importance of our life keepers on the West Coast is proven every time we have a life saved by a lighthouse keeper. We know the value of them. Madam Speaker, we've had people in my riding knocking on doors during the campaign. I've met women who've had to make a tough choice whether they're going to buy medicine or buy food. I've met people that have had to come out of retirement to pay for medicine and the cost that medicine's having on them with the limited pension money that they've got. And we know that the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs is really affecting seniors and people in our communities. We understand the importance of trade as New Democrats. We want fair trade, we want good jobs, but we also want to make sure that medicine is going to be affordable. Is the member concerned that CETA will lead to increased costs of prescription drugs for Canadians, given that Canadians already pay more for prescription drugs than nearly every other OEC country?
The Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Before I get to this question, Madam Speaker, I don't know the incident on Denman Island this weekend or whatever, but I think we all need to recognize the sacrifices that emergency response personnel make. And I was fortunate enough before I was here to be able to service 7 years on a volunteer ambulance at home, and so I understand the commitment that people make. And on Thank you. On the weekend, I had a chance to go to the opening of an emergency response center in my riding, which is a small community, decided they needed to have a much better building than they had to put their ambulances or fire trucks in or whatever, and they worked very hard to put that project together, and we were able to celebrate the opening of that. But these people do not do this for money. It doesn't matter what the money is. They do it because they want to make a commitment to their community and to serve their community well. So, and just on the other, quickly on the other issue, I know you want me to answer this and sit down here, but CETA does not change the length of the pharmaceutical patents in Canada. I understand there is a patent restoration mechanism in there if the regulatory delay has taken place on approval of drugs, but it's my understanding it will not necessitate a hike in pharmaceutical prices in Canada.